Right. So our first session, we've done introduction, so I'm going to go straight into the programme. Now, what I've tried to do is put the the old programme and the new programme alongside each other because I know that you're going to be running both. It's a lot of information, so I'm going to just kind of share a bit of an overview today, and then I'll also share with you some information after so that you've got time to kind of look through, digest it, and then come back with any questions. Because I realise it's going to be a bit of a information overload. So we'll look at a bit of an overview of the programme. We'll then start to think about what your roles and responsibilities will be. You'll obviously have quite a good understanding of this anyway from running the programme before, so some things will probably be quite similar. Some things might be a bit different. We'll then start to look at the registration and onboarding side of things. We're not in a position to start onboarding participants yet because we have to wait until the DFE opens the portal. But we'll look at what that process will look like so that when it comes to that time that you're ready to go. Okay. So you may be quite familiar with our principles, but I wanted to start with that just so that you can kind of see why our programme is the way that it is. So we have that regular bite-sized learning, and you'll see that across both programmes. Everything's kind of rooted in the science of learning, and so you'll see a lot of that kind of feed through. We've got that interlinked curriculum, so trying to make sure that everything feeds into each other. And the context-specific support. And you'll see that in, I suppose, in two ways, in that we try and make sure that we have examples that go across different contexts, but we're also really focused on making sure that mentors are ensuring that their support is context-specific as well. We've got examples that are set in the classroom so that people can watch a video example and see how they'd apply that to their classroom. And we talk about that practice makes permanent, again, coming back to the science of learning and that element of practice. I'm not sure what it's like in other programs, but that element of practice is really key in our coaching. That and through all of our sessions really in making sure that ECTs have that opportunity to practice outside of the classroom, so that they have that sort of set up ready for when they go into the classroom. And we also want to be able to be flexible. So the programme is flexible. There's lots of things that we can do to make sure that it meets the needs of the ECTs that you have in your network. So hopefully you'll see some of these throughout the programme. So I assume that this will be the same across all providers, and so the language will be familiar to you. Induction coordinator is now called induction tutor. They are your main point of contact, I suppose, in schools, and this would be the same with all, I imagine, wouldn't it, that you have your induction tutors that are that key person. Yeah. So induction tutors, then you've got your mentor based in the school and your early career teacher. And then we have our facilitators who are going to run your events. So we'll talk a bit more about the events that they'll be facilitating as well. So this is the pre-2025 programme. So anybody who's coming over who's in the 24 cohort, I suppose you may have some people who were in the 23 cohort as well, your Aprils, your January starters, or anybody who's sort of come back. So this is the overview of that programme. So this is the first year. And in the first year is when they have all of their modules released to them. And the modules are split into 3 strands, so behaviour, instruction and subject. And they have those modules released over the first year, broken down into those terms. They also have their instructional coaching from their mentor. So they have weekly instructional coaching and a weekly self-study. And those two should, wherever possible, align. They don't always, but ideally the coaching will be based on the self-study that they're doing. And they have conferences and clinics throughout that time as well. And I'll show you exactly when those are in just a moment. The second year in the pre-25 programme, there are no new modules in year 2, other than stretch modules. So there are some stretch content, but generally year 2 is about that sort of consolidation, revisiting. So in term 1, we suggest that they complete any modules that are left from year 1, and then they have a diagnostic quiz to complete. And then the rest of the year, they can revisit any modules, they can complete any reading suggested by the year 2 diagnostic quiz, or they can complete any stretch modules, which takes them beyond the curriculum. It moves to fortnightly study in year 2 and fortnightly coaching. And again, they still have facilitated sessions, which I'll talk about in a moment. So these are the facilitated sessions, the live events for pre-2025. So they have, year 1's probably not going to be that relevant to you, but I'm going to talk you through all of it because it might be useful to see how it kind of fits into the bigger picture. So they have their launch conference in the autumn term and then the clinic. The conferences are face-to-face and they are all-day events generally, 6 hours I think they are. And then the clinics are generally online, 90 minutes. So you've got those 2 different types. So first term, conference 1 and clinic 1. In the spring term, you've got conference 2 and you've got another clinic. And then in the summer term, there's just 1 clinic. And then in year 2, which is where you'll be picking this up, you'll be delivering conference 3 in the autumn term. And this is a sort of launch into the second year, essentially. And then you've just got your 3 clinics. In terms of timings, so we just give you these windows of when the events should take place, and then it's up to you in terms of scheduling where in those windows you want them to take place. But it's just important that the conferences are those face-to-face. Some people split them into like twilights, but generally we would recommend that they're done as a face-to-face all-day event. Okay. Before I go on to the 2025 curriculum, I'm just going to pause there and just see if you've got any questions about the general structure of the pre-25 programme.
Can I just ask, so you said the conferences are all-day events, so that'd be something obviously we would facilitate within our trust or partnership. And then the clinics, can they be either face-to-face or online?
Yeah, they're generally held online. So most people do them online, but they can be face-to-face. They're usually just done online just because when people have got like a, they're reaching far across the country and it's easier to get them to be done.
Yeah, no, that's...
And they're usually held after.
Can I ask? Sorry.
No, go on.
I was going to say, when are they held?
Yeah.
That's my next question.
They're usually held after school, so people tend to do them like 3:30, 4 o'clock. Some people have tried doing them at different times. Like some people have tried doing like having some in the morning, some at lunchtime, some after school, but generally I'd say after school.
And how long are the clinics?
So they're 90 minutes.
Okay. That was it for me at the moment. Thank you. And
Perfect.
obviously, we facilitate the clinics online as well, or is that?
Yeah. So all
Yeah,
of
I thought so.
these live events will be facilitated by you.
Perfect. Okay.
Okay. So I'm going to start talking about ECT 25 now and how that's sort of different to the older program. So this is a diagram to show how the curriculum works for ECT 25. So whereas in the old program we have behaviour, instruction, subject in 3 blocks, ECT 25 is a more spiralised curriculum in that we have got modules from the different strands across the term. So for example, in term 1, you can see we've got 3 modules from the behaviour strand, and we've got 2 modules from curriculum and assessment strand, which is essentially our subject strand. We also have a new 4th strand for ECT 25 called professional practice, which comes in at the end of the 2 years. And this is all about implementing change into their classroom, and they will look at an element of their practice that they want to develop, and they then look at making changes to their classroom practice. So you'll see that there's a bulk of professional practice at the end of the 2 years. So then rather than having the whole behaviour strand instruction subject, the modules are grouped into themes instead. So for example, in the first term, the theme is creating the enabling conditions for learning, and you have those modules within that theme. You'll see as well that there are less modules than in the previous programme, because we move from having weekly study in the old programme to fortnightly study in the new programme. I'm going to just show you how that looks in a bit more detail. So if you just look at term 1, for example, which was about enabling conditions for learning, you can see there are 6 modules here, and they're suggested over 2 weeks. So they have a fortnight to complete that. And then you can also see the events, that run alongside. So we've got conference 1 and clinic 1. I'll give you a moment to just have a look at that, because I know there's a lot of information on there. Obviously, don't expect you to take it all in, but just to get an idea of how that works. And then let me know if you've got any questions.
Yeah. So can I just ask, will conference 1 be picking up threads and themes that run through that whole term in relating to enabling conditions?
Yeah, so
or is that more of an intro?
it's more of an intro, but it will kind of pick up on some of the themes within that. I'm just looking whether it would include all of them. I don't know that it would include all of them, but it is more of a kind of introduction, and it will kind of set them up for that, well, for the year really. But it is still focused on enabling conditions.
And are the conferences still a whole day?
Yeah. Yes, good question. Yeah, same. They're the same. The conferences are generally exactly the same in terms of the timings and also where they are positioned. But yes, they are still full day, 6 hours, I believe.
Okay.
Just a quick one from me as well. With the events, the conference and the clinic, is there an order that they should be done where it's conference first, then clinic? Or can
Yes,
we pick and choose?
that's a really good question. Generally, that we suggest that they're done in the order that is on here. If you do ever think actually we'd really like to do this clinic before, then I'd say always just check with me, because I can check with learning design whether it's appropriate, because there's some where actually, say like conference one always has to be the first conference. We would say don't ever do anything before you've done conference one. But with the clinics, sometimes it doesn't matter as much if they're done in a different order. So it may be that that's still the case. And I'm not actually sure, because I know I can see that these sort of fit with the theme. Whereas before we were quite flexible in terms of clinics, and they could kind of be done at any point really. So I guess the short answer to that is, if you do want to change any of the order, just let me know and I can just confirm whether it's appropriate to change them.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
That's okay. Okay. So this is a bit of a long slide, so I'm just going to give you a moment to read it and then I'll explain. So one of the key differences between the old programme and the new programme is, like I said, the self-study goes from weekly in year one to fortnightly across the 2 years. Instructional coaching or coaching remains as being a weekly expectation. And instructional coaching is like our thing, like it's the part that we think is really, really key to success on the program. But what we have done is put in the flexibility for mentors to do some pastoral coaching, because we also recognised that there was a lot and not enough time possibly to have those pastoral conversations. So there are essentially two options, and this is something that I'll ask you about further down the line in terms of what you want to do. You can stipulate that they have to do instructional coaching weekly, or you can give them the option of doing instructional coaching one week and pastoral coaching the other week. Or you can give that decision to schools to make, and they can be a bit flexible. But it is a requirement that they do instructional coaching at least fortnightly. And if they don't do a pastoral session, then it should be an instructional coaching session. So coaching should still be weekly, but there is an option for a fortnightly pastoral instead of instructional. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Great. Okay.
You just give me a flavour of what the pastoral coaching touches upon that would be beneficial if we were making a recommendation to our induction leads or our head teachers. Because I quite like that element, but I don't want to direct it unless it's required or needed.
So we aren't planning on really mandating what's covered in those sessions. So we're going to give a kind of guidance document which sort of talks about the things that they might include, and gives a suggested structure. But what we really want is it to be a space where if mentors feel they need to have a session around kind of well-being or anything like that, that they have got the space to be able to do whatever it is that the ECT needs that might not be covered within their instructional coaching, but it's not something that we're going to stipulate in terms of what should be covered, other than to give some general advice.
Okay, so it's not. I like that idea. Does that mean that it won't come through Step Lab then, the pastoral coaching?
No,
Because it
so
won't be.
they will log it, but the only thing that they would log would be just to say that a session has taken place. But we wouldn't expect anything more than that, really. It would just be for them to decide what they want to do. So yeah, hopefully it just gives, and what a lot of delivery partners have said is that they want to give the option so that they would generally do instructional coaching, but if there was a week where actually they thought that their ECT is really struggling and they just need a little bit of support that's not instructional coaching, that they've got the flexibility to then offer that. Okay, so this is now going into the mentor program. So before I go on to that, have you got any other questions, sort of ECT program wise? Okay, so pre-2025 first, mentors are on the 2-year program. So in year 1, they have a launch conference in the autumn term. They've got 1 clinic in the spring, and then they have conference 2 in the summer term. In year 2, they just have 1 clinic, and that's up to you in terms of when you schedule that for. It can be at any point during the year. I generally think spring term is probably the best, because you get your kind of autumn, you've got a lot of events going on in the autumn term, but leaving it until summer feels like a bit late. So I would advise around spring term is probably quite good. Coaching for mentors is an optional part of the program, but one that I am a big advocate of. So this is essentially the opportunity for your mentors to have a coaching session. And this will be coaching them on an element of their coaching. So we have a sort of framework with action steps for mentors, so that your facilitators, or in some places, induction tutors, can run a coaching session for their mentors. It is completely optional. You don't have to run it. Some people offer it to all their mentors. Some people offer it to mentors that they think maybe need a little bit more support. So it's really flexible in terms of how you offer that. And we'll go into more detail in a later session in terms of what that looks like. Mentors also have access to lots of different resources on Step Lab. They've got their orientation in year 1 and year 2, and then they have this mentoring and coaching development area, which is also optional, but it's there for them if they need it. They also have access to everything that the ECT has access to. So it's optional for them to watch the videos and the examples, but I would encourage it, because it means that they get a good understanding of what it is that the ECT is studying.
Can I just ask a question there? Sorry if it's a bit silly.
Yeah,
so I'm aware that ECMs +1, there's no longer any training for them in the new model.
Yeah.
But the ones that are moving over will still do the 90 minutes. I mean, it makes sense for them to understand the program, so I'm not disputing that. But they're still, if you're a current ECM and you become an ECM +1, you still continue your mentor training for that 1 year.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yeah, it's not a silly question at all, because it's something that's come up quite a lot. But yes, because they are on the old program, they are still entitled to the 2 years of training. So they'd still need that final clinic.
but it's not onerous. So 90 minutes
No.
to get their head around what they have to do and understand. I think it makes sense. Okay, thank you.
That's okay. So I don't have a diagram for 2025 programme yet. I was searching around trying to find one, but we don't have one yet. So when we do, I'll pop a diagram in. But for your 2025 mentors, it's a 1-year training programme. They have 2 conferences and 1 clinic. The order is slightly different for them because in the old programme, it's conference 1, clinic, conference 2. They will have conference 1, conference 2, and then their clinic. And that's because the clinic builds on conference 2. So slightly different order to what they've had before. But essentially, conference, clinic. In their second year, there's no further training, but they would continue to support and coach their ECTs, and they do still have access to all of the mentoring and coaching development area and Step Lab, but they just don't have any events.
Question, sorry.
Yes.
If a mentor leaves, say halfway through the year, and a new mentor is recruited to support an ECT in their second year, does that mentor have to retrospectively do the year 1 training program if they haven't done it?
So if they're a new mentor and they're a new mentor, but their ECT is in year 2, is that what you mean?
Correct. Yes.
So a mentor, whenever they join, no matter what their ECT is doing, the mentor gets their training program. So if they start now or they start whenever they start, essentially, they're going to be joining the 1-year training program, and they would start it from the beginning.
Now, obviously, a lot of our mentors have done all their training through the Best Practice Network, because I'm assuming the assumption is they don't have to go and retrain how to be a mentor on the Ambition program unless they want to, or they can have access to the resources. There's no mandate for them. Is that right?
Yeah. So again, this is kind of up to you in terms of what you want to offer here, because you're absolutely right in that there is no expectation for them to redo training because they have done their training and they're not entitled to more training because they only get to train on it once. However, you've obviously got the issue that they've trained on a different program, so they're not going to be familiar with the Ambition program, and we obviously want them to be proficient in coaching with Ambition. So we do have Step Lab training, which happens at the beginning of every term. So they can go along to that. It's only 30 minutes and it will walk them through the Step Lab platform. So I would definitely recommend that. Then you can still invite them to your events or perhaps to your launch event. But there's no expectation for you to do that because you obviously wouldn't get payment for them because they're not funded. But if you wanted to, I suppose like getting them to come along to some kind of event is probably going to mean that they're going to be doing a better job at mentoring. So you might either want to invite them, or you could assign them a catch-up version of the event so that you could say, like, just make sure that you watch this catch-up. Or you might even decide to add a delivery partner last year who was in the same position as you, and they just held like a mini briefing session for the mentors in that position, so that they could just do like an hour of this is the Ambition program, so that they had a bit of an introduction to it. So it is up to you, but there's just a few ideas in terms of how you might tackle that.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think logistically at the start of term how to plan all this. But I think you're absolutely right. They should be given something. Otherwise, they'll just spend the whole year trying to ask questions and catch up and then not be able to do anything and then get frustrated. So I think you're absolutely right. It's worth offering them something. It's what that looks like. And because we're not expert, I wouldn't say experts, but I've got some really, really good facilitators and people who've been doing it really well on the ITT, so that they'll be aware of how it works. but it's getting the right people
Yeah.
to do that because they're familiar with the program. So Faye and I just need to think about it.
I could also ask, so it was Spencer Academies Trust. They joined us last year, and I'm sure they ran some sort of briefing or something. So I can ask them like what they did, because that might be helpful. Because I know
That'd
they
be
were
very helpful.
the same thing. Okay, so this is the structure of a week or a fortnight. It's the same essentially for both programs, other than for the old program it's every week, and in the new program it's every fortnight. Although I suppose for you, they'll all be going into their second year, so they'll be fortnightly anyway. So generally everybody will be fortnightly. So the ECT has their self-study, they work through that. The mentor will observe some teaching, 15 minutes or so of a lesson, and then they have this feedback meeting where they meet to review their previous target, look at their new target. The mentor models good practice, and the ECT gets to practice their step, and then they agree their actions. And then they would embed that, and then you start the whole cycle again with the next self-study and observation, etc. Any questions? I know we've kind of gone through questions as we've gone along, but I thought I'd just check. Yeah.
Just in terms of the timetable for the time that the ECT and the mentor has together, I know you said that that's a fortnightly cycle. So is the assumption that it's an hour a week, for example, protected time on the timetable for the ECT, and one of those hours is used for the observation and the other hour the next week is to have the conversation?
So I suppose I've said that slightly wrong, haven't I? Because they actually will still have, so the ECT will only have their self-study every fortnight, but they'd still meet with their mentor every week. So I suppose it is slightly, it's slightly different. Because
I'm just trying to work out when that 15 minutes observation, sorry, I'm just trying to work out when that 15 minutes observation would happen in addition to the meeting.
So they would just, generally what would happen is, let's say they're meeting with their mentor on a Friday, then the mentor might do that 15-minute drop-in on the Wednesday, but generally they'd agree like on the previous meeting. So if you said, right, this is what you're practicing this week, when's a good time for me to come in and see you do that? They'd say, oh, I've got this lesson on Wednesday where I'm going to be really practicing my transitions, perhaps you could come into that one. And so they'd come in and see that 15 minutes. It can be flexible, or I know when I was mentoring, it wasn't really flexible in terms of when I could come in, because it was based on when I had the free time. So it would have to be either on a Wednesday morning or a Friday afternoon, but there is that flexibility, and yeah, depending on their timetables.
Yeah, because the only pushback I might have, when I will have, is I can only have mentors and ECTs protected for 1 hour. And if the mentor timetable doesn't align, I'm sure it will, but there's always going to be an outlier. Can that observation be done by somebody else? Does it have to be the mentor?
I would say it has to be the mentor. I don't think it would work having somebody else doing it, because the whole idea is that observation feeds into the session, where they're then going to, because the mentor would be able to say, I saw this, and give praise on that, and then build their action step around what they've seen in the lesson.
Yeah. No, I understand. I'm just saying in terms of time, I wouldn't be able to protect a mentor 1 hour and 50 minutes a week. It would have to be an hour a week. And so therefore the mentor session would have to probably be 45 minutes with a 15-minute drop in at some point in the week.
And that's
the only
fine.
way around it.
Yeah, they don't need an hour. 45 minutes is absolutely is absolutely fine. So if you were to split it in 45 and 15, again, I know that that's an annoying 15-minute time, but yeah, 45 minutes is fine for the session.
Okay, okay, thanks.
Okay. I'm going to just move on to registering and onboarding now. So we'll look at registering your schools and your visiting fellows and thinking about supporting participants to onboard. We're going to have a bit of an overview here because our new platform, MyECF, is going to be new to everybody and it's not launched yet. So I can't show you that just yet, but in future sessions, I'll be able to show you the MyECF platform. So these are the other kind of key responsibilities after onboarding that you would have. So monitoring events and attendance, monitoring engagement and intervening where that's appropriate, organisation of coaching for mentors if you choose to run that. There's quality assurance of visiting fellows. So there is an expectation to quality assure all of your visiting fellows to ensure that you're happy with the quality. Updates to ambition will just come through our sort of meetings really. And then we also hold termly reviews, which where we look through the kind of partnership framework and support you in terms of anything that's on there. But again, we'll look at that in greater depth in future meetings. So this is the timeline of registration. Excuse me. So you'll confirm with the schools that you want to work together. And then the first thing that you'll need to do is request the associations on Box, which is our platform for information sharing. And in our next session, I'm going to show you how to do that. So for today, don't really have to do anything. It's just for your awareness. So you'll request associations with all of the schools that you want to work with. Once those associations have been set up, and then the DFE opens its portal, which I believe is on the 16th of June, the induction tutor will be able to register themselves, their ECTs and their mentors through the portal. You will also register visiting fellows. Now, this doesn't actually have to happen here. This can happen at any point, but you'll register any of your facilitators via the new platform so that they're ready to be assigned to any events. Once the school has registered their participants, that data will pull through from the DFE onto our system, and they will have an onboarding email sent out to them. Once they get that onboarding email, it will prompt them to complete what's called a StepLab access form. And that StepLab access form just asks them a few details, and it then gives them access to StepLab, where they'll get all of their learning. You'll then be able to check the status of participants on our portal, on our platform, to check that everybody's registered and they're on there. Any questions about the onboarding process?
No, we've already got the agreements from all the schools that we
Perfect.
currently work with. So that's already in place. We've done it on a Google form. All the
Great.
head teachers have signed that. So we're compliant with that. I think the rest hopefully should be relatively straightforward. This is very clear. So we've got very clear checkpoints here. So thank you.
So you've already done this then, confirm with schools the intention to work together. And the next step, as I said, will be to add the schools to the spreadsheet, which I'm going to show you next week. So we'll be able to get those set up. This is what it looks like. I'm not going to go into lots of detail about this now, because once you've got a license on Box, it will be much easier because we can do one in the session and then you'll be able to put them all on there. But it's good to know the details that we'll need. So school name, postcode, URN, and then we need to know, importantly, which cohorts they'll need. So for most, I suppose it will be 2024 and 2025. But if you do have any where actually they still have they have participants on a 23 or 22 even, then you'll need to just make sure that you've requested for those cohorts as well. And that's all of the information that we need. That's just a screenshot of the email that they get that the induction tutor will get from the DFE. So they'll get an email that tells them that they've been set up with Ambition and Danes as their provider, and they can then choose to reject that, or they can go on and start registering their ECTs. So there's a few issues that sometimes happen that you'll probably be aware of from previous cohorts, when registering on the DFE. So sometimes their details don't come through. This can sometimes be because the school hasn't registered their induction tutor, who hasn't registered the participant. So the first thing is usually checking that they've actually registered them on the portal. Sometimes you probably had this as well. People still get a bit confused between the AB registration and the DFE registration, and sometimes think if they've done the AB, they've done it, and sometimes the other way around as well. The other key issue is, and I don't know how schools do this, but sometimes they do it by accident and they accidentally reject the partnership. So sometimes if they've rejected the partnership, then it can stop them from coming through as well. We will tend to flag to you if the partnership has been rejected so that you can go back and check if they meant to reject it. And if not, then they can get back in touch with the DFE to say they do want to be partnered with you. It is a bit of an annoying process if they do reject it. So I would say when you start to look at kind of comms that's going out, just make it really clear that they don't do that if possible, because it just makes it take a lot longer. The other issue that we often have is where emails from us get blocked. So we suggest that it's a good idea to get schools to whitelist these email addresses so that they don't end up getting blocked. Sometimes they just don't get them at all, and it's because their schools don't allow them to come through. I'll show you more about this when we have access to the platform, because you can see then how you can check if any of their emails are not going through as well. This is quite a key one in terms of them changing their emails. So it's really important that their email address is the same on the DFE to what it is with us. Now, what happens is whatever they register on the DFE, that's what comes through to us, and our systems are like automatically updated by the DFE system. So if they need to change their email address, they need to change it on the DFE. However, we also have a username, which is their email address, that doesn't automatically get updated by the DFE. So if anybody changes their email address, they need to change it on the DFE, and then we also need to be notified so that we can make sure the two align. Hopefully won't be a problem in terms of registering, and I'll tell you again about it because it comes up a lot, but I just thought I'd flag it. There's also our ECT support email address, which again, I'm going to send over to you. But if participants forget their password, then they can email our support line to get that reset. Any questions on registration?
Sorry, can you just flip that? Because I was just writing down the email address, because
Yeah,
that's
of
what
course.
loads of people always end up asking me.
Yeah,
Thanks.
absolutely.
Ambition.org. Got it. Thank you.
I think what I'm going to do, it's okay, and I think I hope you agree, is I'm probably going to send this video out to the induction tutors rather than Faye and I doing another one. This has been so clear. I'm going to share it with induction tutors ahead of any comms that come out with us, and then they'll at least understand the basics of how the programme works, but also they'll have this video as a go-to rather than coming to Claire or to Lou, Faye. They'll have the information in the video. Is that okay?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great idea.
What might be better to send out, because obviously this has got lots of information that's for you as well as that would be useful for them. We will have registration and onboarding specific videos that can be sent out as well. So that will be more, that might be more useful for them. And we've also probably got, I'm just trying to think if there's anything. I mean, I don't mind you sending this out, but it's obviously just got quite a lot of different parts that some will be useful to them and some might not be. So it may be.
Yeah. I mean, if you've got anything, that's fine.
Yeah. I will find, because the DFE also do like videos of what it looks like on the portal as well. So there might be something that's more useful. But again, I do think it's a really good idea to send something out that explains the process. So I'll check for you what we've got and see if there's something that would be more useful for them.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
That's okay. Okay, final bit then is just about visiting fellows. So these are the kind of key things that we say for a visiting fellow. I'll let you just read those a second. That final one there about ideally not a mentor on the ECF programme, I think this was quite key when we first started, because we'd have people training as a mentor and training as a visiting fellow, and it was a bit too much. Whereas I think if they are a mentor but they're actually a fully trained mentor, then that's absolutely fine, it's as long as they have the capacity to do the role. So the training for visiting fellows, we have 2 sessions for them. So the key one is day 1, which is a full day conference, which gives them an overview of the ECT programme, and they have a chance to practice the different events that they will be facilitating as well. So we introduce them to the conferences, we introduce them to the clinics, and they will practice facilitating a section of both of those. They have to attend the first session, day 1, if they're going to be facilitating conferences and clinics. The second day is just a 3-hour session, and this is for coaching for mentors. They don't have to do coaching for mentors in order to deliver clinics and conferences, and they don't have to do day 1 if they're just delivering coaching for mentors. So essentially, day 1 if they're doing clinics and conferences, day 2 if they're doing coaching for mentors. And once we've got the visiting fellows registered, they'll be able to sign up to the events that are coming up for them.
How many visiting fellows would you recommend for, something our size? I think it's 15 schools, and
it depends how many conferences and clinics you'd be planning on running. So we would recommend having 2 visiting fellows for kind of a group of 30 at a conference. And then, I mean, if possible, you'd have 2 at each clinic. But there's a real kind of range in terms of how many people have, because some people would have facilitators and just say, right, these facilitators are just going to facilitate on like year 1 of the program, or they're just going to facilitate for ECTs or for mentors. And then I have some delivery partners who have like 2 visiting fellows that work across everything. So it really depends a bit on capacity. What else was I going to say about that? How many do you have currently?
We've had so our facilitator done a lot of training already for best practice, so they've been facilitator trained. And I did ask Nick whether or not they'd have to do. I mean, I think it's worthwhile them doing some facilitator training because of the program's different. So
yeah.
you know, but making them do all of it, and they've already done, again, facilitation is facilitation. I think for them it's more understanding how the program works, which is key, rather than learning how to facilitate. So I wouldn't expect them to have to do that bit again. But how many do we have? We've got about well, one. I'd have to think about it. I think across the last 4 or 5 years we've probably had 8. But some of them are no longer in post, some of them are in different roles, some of them don't want to do it, some might want the opportunity. So I think that's something that Faye and I have to go back and have a look at our current cohort, because obviously that's time for them when we're going to look at their allowance for directed time and all of that.
I think as well, just making sure, I know I had a delivery partner where they only had 1 visiting fellow, and then that visiting fellow was not able to run an event, and so I guess it's just making sure that you've got that contingency planning when you're recruiting them. Okay, I'm going to come back to the QA process at another time.
Oh, I just got a question. Are the materials for the fellows, are they already available? So if we started getting them, looking at it next for the summer term.
That's a good question. So some of them are available, some of them aren't. So we haven't got any of the new content available yet, but we do have the old program content available. So once they are registered, then they'll have access to everything that is available on StepLab. So I'll be able to show you where that is, and they'll be able to start accessing materials.
Okay, thank you.
It's okay. Okay, so I'm going to stop there with the kind of next steps. So you've already confirmed your partnership, so that's fine, you don't need to do that. The next thing will be registering schools on Box, but that will be following our next session. I've put share your proposed events calendar with me. That is up to you really, but it would be useful to just see when you've done it. It doesn't have to be now, but just something to think about, to create your events calendar for next year and to just share that with me so that we can discuss it and check that we're all happy with that. And that's it.
Do you have a template for that we could use?
I'm sure I can get you
a template
one.
for the
Yeah, I think I do. I will.
That'd be really useful.